I wanted to lose myself in him. Forget everything. Give in completely. My hands moved lower, feeling the strength of his body. And I could sense how much he wanted me. His need was clear, almost impossible to hide. He shifted, tense, as if fighting the limits of space and control. I couldn't hold back anymore. I knelt down and reached for him with both certainty and hesitation. He looked at me, his voice low and urgent. "Go ahead, baby." My lips drew near, and my breathing grew heavier. I allowed myself to be overtaken by a deep desire that neither of us had spoken aloud. My name is Emily, and I was trapped in a marriage without passion. My husband had money, but he didn't give me love. He wanted a child, but he was sterile. To escape the life I felt stuck in, I had to lie. But how long could I carry that lie? How far would I go to protect a truth I was trying to hide? This is my story. It was an autumn evening. Nathan had just returned from a business trip outside the city. I had eaten alone, as usual, and was preparing myself for another quiet night. Then the phone rang. "Mrs. Marion?" said a deep voice on the line. I felt a chill. "Yes, this is Dr. Lemoyne. Your husband has been in a car accident." I stopped breathing. "An accident? Is he all right?" "He's alive, but seriously injured." What happened after that was a blur. I could barely focus. I only heard parts of the explanation. A wet road, high speed, a violent crash. At the hospital, Nathan looked nothing like himself. His face was bruised, one arm in a cast, and his legs still under a white sheet. The weeks that followed were difficult. Nathan had survived, but everything had changed. With damage to his spinal cord, he could no longer move his legs. He stopped talking much. He avoided eye contact. He locked himself in his office all day, managing his business from afar, and refused all help. I stayed with him, quiet, trying to be part of a life that no longer felt like mine. He had let go of any desire to live. "You should go out more," he told me one day, still not looking at me. His voice felt distant, like a stranger's. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're young, and I—" He stopped, tightened his jaw, and stared out the window. I stayed silent. I wanted to tell him I wasn't going anywhere, but even I didn't know if that was true. That night, as I stood in front of the mirror, a thought crossed my mind. Do I still have the right to hope for something else? A different life, one that didn't feel like it was slowly disappearing beside his. Days passed, then weeks, then months. After a year, our life was filled with silence and routine. The house, already quiet before the accident, now felt like a tomb. Nathan buried himself in work. Unable to accept his new reality, I drifted through the rooms like a shadow. The house felt too big, too empty. I woke up alone. I ate alone. I went to bed alone. Nathan was no longer a husband. He was simply another person, living in the same space. He only spoke to me when he had to, and even then, his words were flat, emotionless. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. "Emily." His voice broke the silence. He sat in his chair, facing the fireplace, his eyes on the flames. "Yes?" I said. He turned toward me, expressionless. "We need to have a child." I stood still. Child?" I repeated, as if I didn't understand the word anymore. He nodded. "An heir. It's important." I let out a small, uncomfortable laugh. He wasn't talking about a child, not with love or hope, but about an heir, something to carry on his name, a sign that he still existed, even in this new condition. "Nathan, how do you expect us to—" I began, but he cut me off. "Artificial insemination," he said firmly. His words hit hard. He didn't reach out to me. He didn't try to be close. He just wanted a result, a future with his name. Then he said, "This isn't a choice, Emily. It must happen." I looked down, my heart heavy. Was this what I had become? Just someone to carry a child, nothing more? I felt anger build inside me, a quiet frustration I had held back for too long. "I'll handle everything," he continued. "I've spoken to a doctor." I looked up, my voice colder now. "A doctor?" "Yes, Dr. Carter, a fertility expert. He'll help us." I didn't know who that was. But in that moment, Nathan unknowingly changed my life, because Oliver Carter was about to enter it, and nothing would ever be the same again. 2 days later, I sat in the waiting room of a private clinic. It was a calm, clean place, with white walls and polished wooden details. The air smelled of disinfectant. Nathan had arranged everything. He hadn't asked me what I wanted. I was expected to follow instructions, sign papers, and go through with the procedure like it was already decided. My eyes stayed on the name, written in gold letters on the office door. Dr. Oliver Carter, Reproductive Medicine and Fertility. I sighed and looked down at my hands resting in my lap. Why did being here feel like I was doing something wrong? Maybe it was because this choice wasn't mine. Maybe it was because, for the first time, I realized my life was no longer under my control. "Mrs. Marion." I looked up quickly. The voice was deep and calm, but there was something gentle about it, too. That's when I saw him for the first time. Dr. Oliver Carter stood in front of me. He was tall, with broad shoulders, wearing a white coat that fit perfectly, but it wasn't his size or appearance that affected me the most. It was his eyes. His gray eyes looked straight at me, as if he could see what I was feeling. His calm, focused look made me uneasy, as though he already knew I didn't want to be here. "You can come in now." I stood up, a bit nervous, and followed him into his office. The room was large and filled with natural light, from a big window that showed a garden outside. He pointed to a chair across from his desk and sat down, still watching me carefully. "So, Mrs. Marion," he said, opening a file and reading a few lines. Then he looked back at me. "Emily," I said without thinking. A slight smile appeared on his lips. "Emily," he repeated slowly. Hearing my name spoken like that gave me a strange, warm feeling. "I know this process can be difficult," he said in a professional voice. "Do you have any questions before we begin?" So many thoughts filled my mind. Yes, I had questions. Too many. Why was I doing this? Why did my husband see me only as someone to carry a child? Why was I sitting here, feeling like something had shifted in my life? I cleared my throat. "Have you handled other cases like mine?" He tilted his head. "Every case is different. But what I can say, Emily, is that this decision should come from you." I looked up at him quickly. It was the first time in months someone reminded me that I still had a choice. I left Dr. Carter's office feeling strange. It wasn't just about the procedure or the uncomfortable topic. It was something else. His eyes, his voice, the way he said my name like it mattered. I felt ashamed for thinking about it, but I couldn't deny the truth. Dr. Oliver Carter had awakened something in me I thought was gone, a small spark. A reminder that I was still a woman, not just someone used for creating an heir. Nathan didn't ask much about the appointment. Just one question. Everything went fine with Carter? Yes, I answered, not adding anything more. Good. Let's make sure everything moves quickly. That was it. No questions about how I felt. No concern. I was just part of his plan, part of his goal. But my view was starting to change. When I went back to Dr. Carter's office, my heart was beating faster than before. He welcomed me with the same quiet smile, his eyes just as sharp. Emily, it's nice to see you again. I found it hard to meet his eyes. I felt like he could read my thoughts. Hello, Doctor. Oliver, he said softly. I swallowed. That small correction, a first-name invitation, felt like a quiet step across a line. We talked about my test results and the next steps. He explained everything clearly, but I had trouble focusing. You seem a little distracted, he said gently. I stiffened. No, it's just a lot to take in. He put down his pen and leaned back in his chair. Emily, are you sure you want to do this? I looked down. Nathan wants a child, I said quietly. I didn't ask what Nathan wants. My heart skipped. The room suddenly felt warmer, heavier. I slowly looked up at him, and in his eyes I saw something new. Not just kindness, something personal. Something that felt like interest, curiosity, maybe even the beginning of desire. In that moment, I knew I was crossing a line. The days after that meeting were filled with confusion. Every time I thought about Dr. Carter, no, Oliver, I felt a slow heat rise in me. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was becoming something stronger. I told myself I had to forget him. I had a role to play, a duty, but something inside me was starting to fight that. A week after that visit, I got a call. Emily, I knew his voice right away. Calm, deep, almost too familiar. Yes, I'd like to meet with you again before the procedure. There are a few things we should talk about privately. I frowned. Privately? Not at the clinic. I think meeting outside would help. My breath caught for a moment. What he was suggesting was risky, but part of me wanted to say yes. Where? Tomorrow evening. I'll send you the address of a quiet place. You can decide at the last moment if you want to come. He ended the call before I could say anything. I felt trapped in a decision that didn't feel like a real choice. The whole day, I fought with my thoughts. I knew I shouldn't go, but when night came, I got in my car and followed the address he had sent me. It was a quiet restaurant outside the city. Elegant, but not too fancy. He was already there, sitting near a large window, wearing a dark shirt that stood out in the low lighting. When he looked up and saw me, a chill ran down my spine. He stood slowly, a small smile on his lips. You came. I sat across from him, my heart beating fast. Why am I here? I asked. Pretending I was still in control. He didn't answer right away. He looked at me for a long time, as if trying to understand how far I was willing to go. Then he leaned forward slightly and said softly, "Because you wanted to." My breathing grew quicker. I knew there was no turning back now. Whatever happened tonight, things would change. The tension between us was strong. We were alone at the table, but it felt like the rest of the world had disappeared. Oliver looked at me with the same intense stare, and I didn't know whether to run or give in. I took a sip of wine, trying to stay calm. "So," I asked, trying to sound casual, "what did you want to tell me?" A soft smile touched his lips. "I wanted to know how you really feel, Emily. Are you doing this for yourself, or just for Nathan?" "It's not that easy," I said, staring at my glass. "But it is," he replied gently. "The only thing that matters is what you want." His voice felt like a trap, like a promise. I looked up at him. "And what if I don't know what I want?" Oliver leaned back slowly, watching me closely. "Then maybe you need someone to help you figure it out." My heart skipped a beat. I understood what he meant, and what scared me wasn't his words. It was how I felt about them. I wanted him to help me. I wanted to escape the life I no longer recognized, and I knew that with him, I could lose myself completely. After dinner, we stepped into the cool evening air. My breath showed in the cold, but the chill in the air wasn't what made me shake. Oliver stopped near my car and turned toward me. "Are you sure you want to go home tonight?" He didn't explain further. He didn't have to. I felt the heat spread through me, a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. This was his invitation. A choice. The last chance to turn back. I looked up at him, and in his gray eyes I saw something I never found in Nathan. A promise of freedom, a way out of the invisible prison I was stuck in. My hand shook slightly as I opened the car door. "Good night, Oliver," I whispered. He didn't try to stop me. He let me go. But before I stepped inside, I heard his quiet voice. "This is only the beginning, Emily." And I knew he was right. I had just stepped through a door I would never be able to close. The next few days were hard. I kept telling myself nothing had changed, that I was still the same, still faithful, still committed. But each night, lying in that cold bed, I couldn't stop my mind from going back to him, to his eyes, his voice, the way he looked at me. I hated myself for thinking about it, but the more I tried to forget him, the more I couldn't stop. The next appointment came sooner than expected. I got ready without thinking, but with more care than usual. A slightly tighter blouse, a touch of perfume, lipstick a bit darker than what I usually wore. I told myself it was just another medical visit, but I knew that wasn't true. When I arrived at the clinic, Oliver was already there, leaning against his desk. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled up slightly. Just seeing him like that made something stir inside me. "Emily," he said, with that same quiet smile that always shook me. I sat down across from him, trying to act normal. "We'll go over the last steps before the procedure," he said in a professional tone. He explained what would happen next, but I wasn't really listening. My focus was on his presence, his hands touching the papers, the shape of his face when he turned toward me. Then he stopped. "Emily, are you all right?" I blinked, brought back to the moment. Yes, I'm fine." "You seem distracted." His eyes stayed on me. The space between us felt too small, the room too quiet. I opened my mouth to speak, but I said nothing. The silence between us was heavy. Then, slowly, he stood and walked around the desk. My heart raced. He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could smell him. A warm, woodsy scent that made me feel dizzy. "Emily," he said softly. I looked up at him, And in that moment, I understood. We had crossed a line we couldn't take back. He raised his hand and lightly touched my arm. It was just a simple gesture, but it sent a wave of energy through me. I shivered and couldn't move. I didn't want to stop him. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, but I said nothing, because I didn't want him to stop. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. His breath was close, his eyes fixed on mine, waiting for a signal. No, a yes, but I stayed silent, because inside, every part of me had already given him the answer. I wanted to feel his closeness, to forget everything else. Who I was, where I was, and just exist in the warmth I felt beside him. Then slowly, he leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, barely there, but it lit something inside me. I closed my eyes. I knew this was dangerous, but I gave in. His hands slid gently along my arms. He wasn't rushing. He let the moment last, letting me feel every heartbeat. When he deepened the kiss, my whole body responded. I felt everything. His scent, his warmth, the tension between us. One of his hands rested on my waist and pulled me slightly closer. I didn't resist. My body moved on its own, searching for the connection I had been missing for so long. And then suddenly, reality struck. Nathan. My marriage. My life. The promises I had made. I pulled back quickly, breathing hard, my heart racing. I can't, I said, my voice shaking as I looked away. Oliver didn't move right away. His eyes were still on me, serious and deep. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand," he said quietly, but there was no anger, no blame, just a quiet certainty. He knew this wasn't really the end, and deep down, I knew it too, because even though I had stopped the moment, I had already let something inside me go. The next few days were painful. I told myself nothing had happened, that I was still faithful. But every night, when I lay in our big, empty bed, I remembered his touch, his voice, his eyes. I tried to focus on my duties, on caring for Nathan. I tried to hide inside routine, but it wasn't enough. Oliver stayed in my thoughts, like a shadow I couldn't shake. A week passed. I avoided the clinic, delayed our next appointment. I needed time, but Oliver didn't wait forever. One evening, coming home from a friend's house, I saw him standing outside, leaning against his car, under the streetlight. My heart jumped. He wore a dark shirt, his expression calm but intense. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He already knew I would walk toward him, and I did. I stopped a few steps away, unable to turn back. "Emily," he said, voice low and serious. I didn't answer. There was no need. He reached out his hand. I hesitated for just a moment. Then I placed mine in his. He held it gently, then pulled me closer. His breath brushed my cheek. "Tell me to stop now, or it'll be too late." I closed my eyes. I knew what he meant. I knew what was ahead, but instead of stepping back, I leaned into him. "No, Oliver," I whispered. "Take me with you." That was all he needed to hear. The drive to his apartment was quiet, but the air between us was full of tension. I should have felt guilt, doubt, fear, but all I felt was a need I hadn't known in years. When we arrived, and the door closed behind us. The world outside appeared. I wasn't thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, only about now. About what I felt. About the freedom, the warmth, the fire he had brought back to life in me. My lips moved closer to his, and my breath grew heavier as I gave in to a deep, silent desire. The room was dim, the shadows on the walls dancing as I knelt there, caught in the moment. Oliver watched me with an intense look, his eyes dark and filled with something fierce. I felt the tension between us grow, each second heavier than the last. "Stand up," he said, his voice low and rough. A chill ran through me. The way he spoke left no room for hesitation. He wanted full control, and I was ready to give it to him. Slowly, I obeyed. He pressed me against the cold wall again, one hand resting near my neck, the other lifting my legs slightly, exposing my weakness. I couldn't move. The way he touched me, the way he looked at me, it felt like I was giving up all control, and somehow I didn't want to fight it. My heart raced. His breath warmed the side of my face. "Let me lead. Your body is mine now," he whispered. His voice wasn't forceful. It was soft and certain, like a promise. And when he finally held me, a rush of heat swept over me. I let out a soft sound. Every move was slow, steady, and full of purpose. He didn't want to just be close to me. He wanted me to feel everything, to lose myself completely in the moment. When he moved faster, I couldn't hold back a sound. "More," he said quietly, and I gave him more. Every breath, every shiver, every silent cry. The room was filled with tension and energy, each second carrying us higher. It was like a dance I couldn't step away from, even as it pulled me further from anything I'd ever known. When the moment reached its peak, it felt like everything stopped, bright and dizzy, leaving us breathless, holding each other tightly, as if the world might fall away. The silence afterward was long, only broken by the sound of our uneven breaths. Then Oliver leaned in and kissed my shoulder, soft and gentle, so different from the fire that had just burned between us. "You're mine," he said. I closed my eyes. I couldn't deny it. In that moment, I belonged to him. The quiet stayed in the room, heavy with the memory of what had just happened. My body felt weak, still warm from the closeness. My thoughts were lost in the afterglow, but then reality returned too fast. My phone vibrated on the bedside table, cutting through the silence like a sharp blade. I looked over and felt my stomach twist when I saw the name on the screen. Nathan. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone. I hesitated. Then finally, I answered, my voice shaky. "Hello?" Nathan's voice was cold and sharp. "Where are you?" My chest tightened. The clock showed 11:45 p.m. I had no excuse, nothing that would make sense. Panic rose quickly inside me. I couldn't tell him the truth. My thoughts spun wildly. My lips moved before I could stop them, and the words came out in a rushed whisper. I had an accident." Silence followed. Then Nathan's voice came back, low and angry. "What did you just say?" My heart pounded. I realized, too late, that I had crossed a line I couldn't erase. I froze, still holding the phone against my ear. My mind raced to come up with something, anything, that would sound believable, but I couldn't think. My body was still trembling from what had just happened, and Nathan's voice echoed in my head. "Emily," he said again, slower this time. "Where are you? What kind of accident?" I swallowed hard. "My car. It slid off the road. I'm fine now. I just needed time to calm down." A long pause followed. I imagined him trying to decide whether or not to believe me. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. "I didn't want to worry you," I whispered. His voice lowered even more. "Where exactly are you?" I glanced at Oliver, who stood quietly beside me, watching. I couldn't speak. I couldn't answer. The silence stretched again. "Emily, are you alone?" Nathan's voice had changed. Suspicion. Cold. "I'm safe," I said finally. "I'll come home soon." Before he could say more, I ended the call. My hand fell to my side. I couldn't look at Oliver right away. I felt sick, confused, ashamed, afraid. He stepped closer, his voice calm. "You don't have to explain anything to me." I looked at him. "I lied to my husband." He nodded slowly. "Yes, but I think you've been lying to yourself for longer than that." His words cut deep. Because they were true. "I should go," I said. He didn't stop me, just stood still, letting me make the choice. I grabbed my coat, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold night air. The wind hit my face, and the guilt rushed in with it. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove. When I got home, the lights were on. Nathan was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. I stepped inside, trying to stay calm. "You're late," he said. "I know," I replied. He studied me carefully. "Your accident, was it real?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. And he didn't push. He turned and walked away. I stood alone in the doorway, wondering if everything had already started to fall apart, and if I had the strength to stop it. The house felt colder than usual. I stood in the hallway, unsure of whether to walk forward or turn back. Nathan had disappeared into his office, closing the door behind him. As always, I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the table in silence. My reflection in the window stared back at me. Tired eyes, messy hair, lips still marked by guilt. How did I get here? I was a woman with two lives. One with Nathan, steady, controlled, responsible. The other with Oliver, wild, forbidden, alive. And I knew I couldn't keep both. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every choice I'd made. Nathan didn't come to bed. I didn't ask where he was. The next morning, I looked in the mirror for a long time. Not to check my appearance, but to really see myself. I saw fear, but I also saw something I hadn't seen in years. A question. A need for truth. Later that day, I called Oliver. "I need to see you," I said. His voice was calm. "When?" "Now." When I arrived, he opened the door without a word. I stepped in. We stood there in silence for a moment, until I finally spoke. "I can't live two lives," I said. "This, with you, it's real, but it's also wrong. I don't know how to fix any of this." "You don't have to fix everything today," he said, "but you have to stop running from what you already know." I looked at him. "And what do I know?" He stepped closer. "That you're not happy. That you haven't been for a long time. and that you want something more." I nodded. Slowly. "Finally, I do," I whispered. Then I turned away. "But wanting something doesn't mean I'm ready to take it. Not yet." He didn't stop me. He simply said, "I'll be here if you choose to." I left his apartment and drove without knowing where I was going. I ended up at a quiet park, sat on a bench, and watched the trees sway in the wind. The silence helped me think. By evening, I returned home. Nathan was at the dining table, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I entered. "I lied," I said. My voice was steady. He didn't react right away. "I know. I don't know if I can keep being this person," I continued. "The one who stays because she's supposed to." Nathan placed his phone down. "Then don't." I blinked. "What?" "I always knew you wanted more," he said. "And I can't give it to you, not anymore." We stared at each other. Two strangers holding a shared past. And in that moment, I realized the truth. My marriage had ended long before Oliver entered my life. I had just been too afraid to admit it. Now, I was ready. I packed slowly, not because I was unsure, but because every small movement felt like a goodbye. I folded clothes I hadn't worn in months. I touched books I once loved, photos I hadn't looked at in years. I didn't cry. There were no dramatic tears. Just silence. Nathan didn't come into the room. He knew. A few times I stopped and looked around. At the walls we painted together. At the bed we no longer shared. At the home we had built and quietly abandoned from the inside. I zipped the suitcase, then sat on the edge of the bed. My hands rested in my lap. So this is what it felt like to let go. When I walked out of the bedroom, I found Nathan standing near the front door. He had changed clothes and looked like he had been waiting for this moment. We didn't say goodbye right away. Instead, he asked, "Do you know where you're going?" I nodded, yes. To him, I hesitated, then said, "To myself." That was the only answer that felt honest. He nodded once. No anger, no blame, only tired acceptance. I picked up my bag. I paused. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," he said, "but we both did anyway." I opened the door. The evening air was cool and still. As I stepped outside, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some doors don't slam shut. They close quietly, softly, and you don't even hear the lock turning until you've already taken the first step forward. And I had. The street was nearly empty. I walked slowly, pulling my suitcase behind me. The wheels made a soft sound on the pavement, the only noise in the still night. The city lights flickered around me, but I wasn't in a rush. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was going somewhere to be someone's wife, or someone's secret, or someone's mistake. I was just me. No explanations. No more lies. No more hiding behind duty or fear. I passed a shop window and caught my reflection. I stopped for a moment and looked. My face was pale, tired, but different. Lighter. Like a weight had finally been set down. I didn't know what would come next. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not even the next hour. But I knew what I had left behind. And that was enough. I kept walking, breathing deeply as I moved forward into the unknown. Not to escape. Not to chase. But to begin. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. What would you have done in Emily's place? Let us know in the comments below. Your thoughts help us all grow and learn together. And remember, every story teaches not just English, but something about life. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.